intimidating to be here, and particularly after Michael's introduction. So let me say a few things about, some insights from economics into AI. So the AI revolution, for us, it's a true general-purpose technology. It's a true technological revolution. It affects all domains of activities: the economy, public services, organization of work, media, culture, and the emergence of generative AI within that revolution is also an unprecedented acceleration. Okay, so now there are various views that economists hold regarding this revolution. One is a kind of pessimistic view that AI should have very little growth impact and very negative employment impact. And my own view is, I would say, cautiously optimistic, is that AI has a substantial growth potential, and it has also the potential to create new jobs. But it all requires appropriate institutions and policies. So on the technological side, I'm more like an optimist. Where I'm less optimistic is on the institutional side. Shall we be able to set up the institutions and policies to harness the growth and employment creation potential of AI? For example, why should I believe that AI should be growth enhancing? AI should be growth enhancing because it allows us to automate some tasks, both in the production of goods and services, but also in the production of ideas. That's things that, we have a paper with Chad Jones and Ben Jones. I was the only non-Jones in the project, and where we emphasize this idea. Okay? So, for example, just to give you a sense of the positive impact that AI can have on productivity, there is this now well-known paper by our friend Eric Brynjolfsson and co-authors, published now in the Quarterly Journal of Economics. And what they do is that they look at the impact of generative AI, of ChatGPT, in a Fortune 500 US company. It's a large firm. And this large US company advises small and medium-sized enterprises on the adoption of new software. So when you are head of the small and medium-sized enterprise, you call this big firm and you say, how should I need your advice to adopt a new software? And you are directed towards employees all over the world, in particular in the Philippines. And you can measure the productivity of these employees by the number of resolutions per hour. How many queries can they answer per hour, okay? And so what happened is that this large company gave access to the Philippines employees to ChatGPT, but gradually, not all at the same time. So you always have a kind of treatment group and a control group. I can compare the productivity of an employee who has access to ChatGPT to answer the questions of SMEs to the productivity of a similar employee in education, health, and everything, but doesn't yet have access to ChatGPT. And what you see is that there is a boost compared to his counterpart or her counterpart who doesn't yet have access to ChatGPT. The employee who has access to ChatGPT, her productivity is increased by 14% after 1 month and by 25% after 3 months, which is very substantial. So you see at the very micro level, in this case, you see a significant impact of AI on productivity. Now the question is, how can you move from micro to macro? So one way is to say, well, let's look at previous technological revolutions. And the other way is to zoom into the fact that AI helps automate tasks in the production of goods and services in particular. So if you just look at previous technological revolution, you see that, for example, the electricity revolution of the 1920s in the US increased productivity growth by 1.3 percentage point per year during 10 years. So if you are growing at 1% per year prior to the revolution, you are growing at 2.3% per year for 10 years, and then you go back to 1%. If you look at the IT revolution, there the growth period was between 95 2005 in the US. It increased growth by 0.8 percentage point per year. If you are growing at 1% per year prior to the IT revolution, for 10 years per year you grow at 1.8, and then you get back to 1%. Okay. What about AI? Okay, and you could say it could be in the same ballpark as the previous revolutions. But you can be now more precise, and you could say, well, why don't we look at, the fact that you automate tasks? So one of my colleagues, Daron Acemoglu, got the Nobel Prize in Economics a year ago, and he's with whom I work a lot on many projects. Of course, when it's always easier to agree with Daron than disagree with Daron. And on this, I don't fully agree with Daron. He says, well, you know what we should do is say, if you want to know the TFP gain induced by AI, what you have to know is a number of things. You need to know the GDP share of tasks that are exposed to AI. Then among those tasks, which are the tasks for which it is profitable to implement AI. Then you want to know the labor share on this task, and then how much labor saving is allowed by AI, okay? And Daron uses numbers from the literature on each of those four terms, and he arrives at a very small increase of 0.07 percentage point additional per year, which is 10 times less than the IT revolution. And in fact, what we did with my colleague, Simon Bunel, who worked with us, I have all my friends here from the AI Commission, and you all know very well Simon. And with Simon, we went back, we said, let's keep the same methodology as Daron, but let's go back to the literature. And we realized that Daron was always extremely pessimistic, and in particular, would assume no progress in the adoption of AI. For example, one assumption would be that the number of tasks where it's profitable to adopt AI would remain the same now and in 40 years. It can be, in fact, anything, the gain between 0.07 or 0.08 and 1.24. And we believe that a reasonable number is 0.68. It's almost 0.7, 10 times as much. So we believe that if we just look at AI as automating tasks in the production of goods and services, it's in the same ballpark as IT revolution. Very much so. We said 0.8, here you get 0.7. But note that this is an underestimate. Why? Because I didn't take into account the fact that AI automates tasks not only in the production of goods and services, but also in the production of ideas. We believe that AI will make ideas easier to find. Some people believe that ideas become harder to find. I never believed that, by the way, but even less with AI. In particular, many new ideas are recombination of old ideas. With AI, you can recombine much more and much more quickly. And you can select among the ideas that you recombine to say, with this one I will try, or that one I will try. So it's obvious that the 0.7 is a gross underestimate of the growth potential of AI. And it will create many new activities. So I am not at all Giovanni Di Empoli. I'm much more optimistic, okay, about AI. Okay, so if you just look at AI automating tasks in the production of goods and services, you would move from the dotted line to the red curve. You see, you increase by 0.7. You have a higher slope for 10 years, and then the red line becomes parallel to the dotted line. But in fact, you move to the blue line because you have on top the fact that AI makes ideas easier to find, okay? The big problem, the big obstacle is the lack of competition. When we look at IT and the evolution of productivity growth in the US, we saw the boost in productivity growth between 1995 and 2005. That's really the IT revolution for you. But you see what happened is that you had a big growth decline right after. And the decline has a lot to do with the fact that during those 1990s where growth was boosting, was booming, you had an increase in concentration. No matter the big sector of the US economy, the share of sales of the four largest firms would grow at an accelerated rate, you see. I look here. You see, so that's what happened is with the IT revolution, you had the emergence of superstar firms. We love them, some of them are. But the thing is that they expanded because they knew how to harness the power of IT better than other firms. But the thing is that they expanded unboundedly and to a point where eventually it discouraged entry of new firms. And you can see the entry rate of all firms, of new firms in the US, going down since the 2000s. So you had this problem that it's always good to let good people grow, but the problem is to make sure that as they grow, they don't inhibit entry of new innovators. Why is that a problem for, why is it a problem for AI? Because you see, in particular, the upstream segments of the AI value chain are dominated by few large firms. I have nothing against them. I love them. You know, I mean, Amazon, Google, Microsoft are fantastic companies, and they dominate the cloud. You have one big actor, GPU, in the market for graphic processors. So we have a problem of competition. And we would like to have unicorns in Europe in particular. So there is a mixture of more dynamic competition policy and also smart industrial policy. We need a DARPA in Europe that includes AI, and so that we can build computing sectors and let new firms grow. I think I don't know how much longer do I have. Am I exhausted? I'm more or less late. So, okay. So, what do I have? So, okay, I don't do employment. So I want to say, at the end of the day, so I skip all this, okay? You are missing a lot. What I want to say is that my conclusion is that AI has a big growth potential. But the problem is that institutions and policies need to adapt. The problem with IT is that competition policy did not adapt to the IT revolution. In particular, we have a very static view of competition policy. We look at market share and market definition. We don't look sufficiently at whether a merger and acquisition will inhibit future entry and future competition. So we have to rethink competition policy. For example, before giving your green light to a merger and acquisition, insist on data sharing. Look at the effect on subsequent innovation. We need to reform our competition policy if we want to fully harness the growth potential of AI. And I think it's a mixture of competition policy and industrial policy. In Europe, in the name of competition policy, we precluded any form of sectoral state aid, unlike China, unlike the US. This is wrong. That's why you have the Draghi report now. That's why Europe is declining compared to China and US, because there they understood that you have to combine smart industrial policy like the DARPA and competition policy. The same for our jobs, and I will be done. AI will destroy some jobs. It will destroy some tasks, but it will create new jobs. New jobs will center around AI management, auditing, prompt engineering, workflow design. There will be many new jobs, and I told you AI will generate many new ideas. And also firms that adopt AI, they become more productive, more competitive. That increases the world demand for their products. So AI has the potential to create new jobs. It's true that there will be threatened jobs concentrated in routine cognitive work. But so what will happen is that AI will certainly make some tasks redundant. It may end up destroying some jobs, but it will create many new jobs. So you need a good labor market system to accommodate the fact that some people will lose their job, but you have to prepare them for the new job. My model is a combination of education. You were talking about education. It's very important to have a school where you learn to learn. It's very important that children, you know, when they don't have to rely on AI to calculate. Une règle de trois, they should be able to do it on their own and read books. So you need a school where you learn to learn. And on top of a good education system with good PISA tests, you have a good flex security system. In Denmark, when you lose your job, for 2 years you get 90% of your salary, and then the state retrains you and helps you find a new job. I think if we want to harness the job creation potential of AI, we need to have good education and good flex security system, like the Danish, like the Danes. And you see, more generally, my view is that AI is like a horse. A horse can take you to the wall, but if you know how to steer the horse, it can lead you anywhere. And AI has a fantastic growth and employment creation potential. It's incumbent on us to set up the right policies and institutions to make the best of the power of AI. But it's not the technology that should be blamed if we don't. It should be ourselves because we failed to put in place the appropriate policies and institutions. Thank you so much.